Hi there, welcome to the channel. Today I bring to you a mystery thriller movie called The Maze Runner. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. A young man wakes up in an elevator that accelerates and stops abruptly. A group of other young people open the elevator and Gally pushes the newcomer out. The group gathers around him but he runs away. Before he gets too far he stumbles and realizes that the entire area is surrounded by walls. The newcomer is then caught but Albie quickly sets him free. Albie asks who he is but the young man has no memories. Albie tells him it's normal since no one had memories upon arrival. Albie introduces him to the glade, explaining how all the young people known as gladers work together to grow food and build shelters. The elevator from which he came is known as the box, and is sent to them once a month to deliver anything else they need along with a new group member. However, none of them know who sent them there. Albie introduces him to Newt, his second in command. The newcomer notices an opening in the wall, so Albie explains that going beyond the walls is forbidden. Later Chuck helps the newcomer set up a place to sleep. When the newcomer heads for the door, Chuck emphasizes that they cannot go in. Miho and Ben come out of the wall and Chuck clarifies that only the runners have permission to go outside. This takes the newcomer's curiosity sky high but Gally pushes him aside. The rest gather as the newcomer panics. Suddenly something menacing moves within the walls before closing. In the night, Newt explains to the newcomer that the runners have been mapping the maze for 3 years to find an exit. Newt points out a subtle sound echoing around them, noting that it's the maze constantly changing. Only the strongest and fastest gladers can be runners, as no one has ever survived being trapped inside the maze overnight. Newt states that there are creatures called grievers that kill anyone caught in the maze at night. Later the newcomer declares that he wants to be a runner. Suddenly Gally challenges the newcomer to a fight. At first Gally easily defeats him and taunts him, but the newcomer eventually uses Gally's strength against him. Annoyed, Gally knocks the newcomer's legs out from under him, causing him to fall and hit his head. Suddenly the newcomer remembers that his name is Thomas. The Gladers celebrate and welcome him into the group, including Gally. Their celebration is interrupted when something howls in the distance. Gally observes that it was a griever, fortunately unable to pass through the walls. When Thomas sleeps, he has flashes of memory, including the faces of doctors and a young girl. The next morning, Albie takes him for a walk. Albie says that it hasn't always been peaceful in the Blade. Few have died due to fear, so they established order to maintain peace. Albie notes that Thomas is curious unlike the others, but he still needs to follow the rules. Albie then shows him the wall where everyone's names are engraved, including those who have died. Thomas adds his name to the wall. Later Thomas helps with farming while thinking of ways to escape. Everything Thomas thinks of has already been tried and failed. Thomas then heads into the forest, but Ben suddenly appears and lunges at him. Ben accuses him of doing something to them and tries to strangle him. Thomas grabs an animal bone and strikes Ben in the head to escape. He then runs back to the glade and Newt hits Ben in the face with a shovel. Thomas explains that Ben attacked him for no apparent reason. The others pin Ben to the ground and lift his shirt, revealing an infected wound. Albie explains that Ben was stung by a griever, causing him to be affected. By the changing, Albie asks what Ben said to Thomas and he admits that Ben claims everything is Thomas's fault. At dusk the gladers force Ben back into the maze. Ben tries to escape as the walls slowly close in, but the gladers push him inside. Soon Ben has no choice but to go. That night Thomas dreams of a laboratory and a scientist who assures him that Wicked is good. He sees the girl's face again and she promises that everything will change. Thomas wakes up and finds Mijo and Albie heading to the maze. Thomas wonders why Albie went there since he's not a runner. Newt explains that Albie wanted to track where Ben was stung. He insists that everyone trust Albie as he was the first to arrive in the glade and has helped everyone who came after. The gladers expect them to return by nightfall, but the doors soon start closing. Suddenly they see Miho carrying a wounded Albie. Everyone shouts for him to make it through without Albie, but with the doors almost closed, Miho is still far away. Thomas impulsively enters and manages to reach the other side before the doors shut. Thomas checks on Albie, who has been stung. Suddenly the grievers howl in the distance and the walls start moving. He gets up to leave, but Thomas insists on not leaving Albie behind. The two of them make their way through the maze while carrying Albie, but the grievers soon draw near. Thomas notices vines on a wall, so they hoist Albie up to hide him. Miho spots a griever nearby and he panics and runs away. Thomas struggles to hold Albie's weight alone, so he hides within the vines. He sees the mechanical legs of the griever as it passes by. When the creature moves away, Thomas ties the vines to keep Albie in place. Then he hides as the griever returns. Thomas retreats but steps on something sticky above him. He finds the griever now close and ready to attack. Thomas runs as the monster chases him, but he ends up in a dead end. With the griever lunging at him, Thomas climbs some vines and gets onto the lower walls. The griever also climbs and pursues him, so Thomas jumps onto another wall and grabs the vines. The creature follows, causing the vines to fall. The griever gets entangled in the vines and Mijo finally finds Thomas. They find a wall closing, so they hurry inside to put the wall between them and the monster. Thomas lingers behind and waits for the griever to approach. He then enters the corridor, barely making it to the other side before it closes. The next day, the maze opens and to everyone's surprise they see Niho and Thomas carrying Albie back. Mijo announces that Thomas killed a griever. In the council hall, Gally points out that Thomas broke the rules. Although Thomas saved Albie and Niho, killing a griever could cause problems. Gally suggests punishing Thomas, but Mijo wants to recruit him as a runner. Suddenly they hear movement outside. The box is back up outside the usual schedule. When they open it, they find a girl inside with a note in her hand saying she is the last one. She suddenly wakes up and breathes Thomas's name before passing out. Newt asks if Thomas knows her, but he claims he doesn't. The others become nervous at the idea that the box will no longer transport supplies. Thomas decides to go back into the maze, but Niho stops him. Thomas points out that they've never captured or killed a griever before, so they need to investigate what they're up against. After much deliberation, Miho brings more people to help them. The group heads to where they left the griever's body. They then remove the leg, which comes apart. Miho finds a device hidden inside the griever's flesh and sees the number 7 on it along with the WCKD label. They take the device back to the others and Thomas urges everyone to go back to figure out how to escape. Gally is against breaking the rules, so he emphasizes that Thomas should be punished. Finally, Newt decides that Thomas will spend a night in the pit punishment, but he still officially promotes him to a runner. Niho takes Thomas to the runner's cabin where they've built a map of the maze. He reveals that they've already mapped the entire maze, but there's no way out. Albie decided not to tell the others to keep hope alive, but now Mijo believes they have a chance. The maze is divided into 8 sections marked by numbers. Each time the maze changes, it opens a section in a specific pattern. Section 7 was open while they were inside, so that's likely where the griever they killed came from. Finally, the girl wakes up but climbs the watchtower and throws rocks at the gladders. Thomas makes her stop and she reveals that her name is Teresa. When he introduces himself, Teresa claims she doesn't remember him. Later, Thomas recounts that she came with the note and the box hasn't been lowered since. Teresa remembers being in the water observed by people and a woman mentioning that Wicked is good. Thomas admits he's had similar dreams and seen her face in them. They wonder why they're the only ones with memories. Other than their names, Teresa reveals 2 syringes she found in her pocket with the WCKD label on them. Thomas deduces that's what Wicked meant that night. Thomas suggests injecting Albie with one of the syringes. Albie starts to fight, so Teresa injects him while the others pulled him down. Immediately, Albie loses consciousness. Gally then takes Thomas to the pit. Thomas asks why Gally hates him and he explains that everything started falling apart after he arrived. Soon Chuck brings food to Thomas while he's in the pit. Chuck shows him a small toy that he believes is from his parents, though he's not sure. Thomas reassures Chuck that they will find a way out. Chuck then gives him the toy and says that although he doesn't remember his parents, he hopes Thomas finds them and gives it to them. However, Thomas returns it to him and promises to help everyone escape so that Chuck can give it to his parents. At dawn, Miho and Thomas run to the inner ring of the maze and discover that Section 7 is open again, even though it shouldn't be. Inside, they find metal structures they call blades along with Ben's discarded clothes. Suddenly, the device they took from the griever starts beeping. They follow where the beeping gets faster until they reach an area that even Niho doesn't recognize. When they reach a dead end, the beeping stops and the number on the screen turns green. Suddenly, the walls open a path and they enter. They reach a tunnel where a red light scans them. Something moves nearby, so they both run outside. The blades start moving, so they run out of the maze. More walls emerge from the ground, closing off the section. Michael and Thomas enter a passage just before it closes. Finally, they return to the glade and announce that they found a new passage that could be an exit. Mijo assumes that this is the passage where the grievers go during the day, and Gally emphasizes that they might end up facing dozens of grievers inside. Thomas and Gally argue until Teresa announces that Albie has woken up. They check on Albie and Thomas encourages him, saying they can finally get out, but Albie claims that they won't let them. He remembers everything and tells Thomas that he was always their favorite. Commotion outside catches everyone's attention. The maze doors aren't closing and instead more doors are opening around the glade. Grievers then appear and everyone runs for cover. Thomas and some others hide in the field, but one of them is caught by a griever. Thomas leads everyone to the village while Gally takes some people into the box. The monsters kill many of the gladders and destroy their camp. When a monster blocks the path, Teresa throws a lamp at it which burns the creature. However, the griever still pursues them. Albie falls, so Thomas positions himself between him and the griever. Suddenly, Newt and some others shoot arrows at the monster and guide the group to the council room, but later stay quiet as the griever climbs the structure. The creature, however, destroys the roof and takes one of them. Chuck is captured, but Thomas and Miho hold on to him. Albie attacks the griever until his arm breaks and he backs away. However, Albie is caught by another griever. Thomas grabs him and Albie tells him to finish the job before being dragged away. Suddenly, the grievers disappear. Gally arrives and punches Thomas, accusing him of causing all of it. Gally reminds everyone that Albie said Thomas is one of the people who sent them there. Convinced that Gally is right, Thomas takes the stinger that Albie had cut from the griever and stabs himself, quickly losing consciousness. Thomas dreams of a facility and sees that many of them were there when they were younger. He saw the gliders inside tanks being monitored by the scientists. When he wakes up, he and Teresa are in the pit. Newt explains that Gally has taken over and insists that anyone not joining him will be banished to the maze. Thomas reveals that he remembers the glade is a test that started when they were children. They were experimented on until they started disappearing one by one. Thomas confesses that he and Teresa worked for the people who put them there, however he's not sure why he and Teresa were sent there. Newt encourages him, saying that what's important is what they can do now. He urges Thomas to finish what he started so that Albie didn't die in vain. Later, Thomas and Teresa are led to the door. Some still hesitate to banish them, asking if Thomas could help them escape. However, Gally insists that they don't need to risk their lives to get out. Gally then reveals that he doesn't intend to banish Thomas and Teresa. Instead, he offers them to the grievers. Teresa is tied to a post, but when the others lift Thomas, he attacks them. Miho, Newt, and Chuck join them to restrain Gally. Thomas offers the others to join them, emphasizing that he'd rather risk his life than be a prisoner in the glade. Some bladers are convinced and Thomas offers Gally to join them, but he just says good luck. The group enters the maze and Thomas leads them to the tunnel in section 7. The group fights a griever with spears, but one is thrown over. Teresa attacks the griever, causing Chuck to drop the device. Chuck jumps and retrieves it, but another griever is climbing up. The others throw the griever off the bridge, but 2 more appear. Chuck and Teresa open the tunnel while the others fight the grievers at the end of the tunnel. Teresa activates a security code and asks Thomas for the code. Thomas asks Miho for the sequence in which the sections of the maze open. Suddenly, a griever falls on top of Miho, then another gladder stabs the monsters in the face. The griever bites the gladder and drags him away. Miho shouts the sequence and Teresa uses the code to open the door. Suddenly, the walls of the passage close, crushing the grievers inside. A door opens inside the tunnel and the survivors enter another room and find the dead scientists. They reach the monitoring room and see monitors showing the glade. Thomas activates a video clip where Dr. Ava Page introduces herself as the Director of Operations of the World Catastrophe Kill Zone Department. She congratulates the boys for completing the maze trials. She reports that the sun squirts the earth, killing billions due to fire and famine. Then a deadly virus known as the flare turns survivors into rage-filled people. However, a new generation seemed to be immune to the virus. Scientists placed young men in the glade to study their brain activity under rigorous conditions in order to formulate a cure. Ava emphasizes that not everyone agreed with the experiment. Soldiers begin to invade behind her as she assures them that her experiments were for the common good. After the video, Thomas finds her body in another room. Behind them, another door opens, but everyone hesitates. Suddenly, Gally appears, but he's been stung. Gally points a gun at Thomas and claims they belong to the maze. He pulls the trigger and Chuck pushes Thomas away as Mijo throws a spear at Gally and he dies. Chuck is shot. Chuck returns the toy to Thomas, thanking him for giving him a chance. Chuck soon passes away and Thomas cries. Armed people invade and take them outside. Thomas finds himself in the desert and is thrown into a helicopter with the others. The people assure them they're safe as the helicopter flies over the maze with them. Dr. Ava holds a meeting with the WCKD people. She wipes fake blood off her forehead and announces that the maze trial was successful. The group can now proceed to Phase 2. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications and please leave a like to support the channel.